All right, hi there, people, and welcome to our anticipated releases for June. I know we're like 10 days late to this, and it's actually just me here. Yeah, if you can tell, we were kind of busy toward the end of May, and finding time to like make this happen was kind of tricky. But then I went back and I looked and I'm like, we haven't missed a month in forever. So I'm just going to make one because all the games that we wanted to talk about this month were not out until at least starting today. So I figure, well, it's not technically too late to put one of these out. And at least that way I can say like we haven't missed any anticipated release videos, which is kind of my goal. So again, it's just me. I'm gonna make this really quick. You know, when I do this by myself, I sound like a guy who just put his 2 weeks notice in at work. I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna talk about the games that we were gonna talk about, and then we're all gonna go and maybe buy some of these games. So to start off, I want to talk about somewhat of a smaller release, though it is a game that I'm really excited to play because I really enjoyed the original version, and that is Alex Kidd in Miracle World. For those that don't know what this is a platform old school game that dates all the way back to 1986. It was like one of Sega's potential like face of the company type thing, you know, before like Sonic became the only face of Sega. Alex Kidd was supposed to be that. It is a platform game that is, I think, phenomenal. It is very simple in its design, as you might kind of tell from the trailers that you're watching, though the remake that you're obviously looking at has a lot more detail. But it was a very simple platform game, at least when you compare it to the likes of Mario and Sonic and things like that. It definitely didn't have like anything innovative and crazy, but what it lacks in that it does make up for in its simplicity and the fact that it's a very easy platform game to get into. The way I like to look at it, Mario is a very skill-based platformer. Sonic is a very speed-based platformer. I've always seen Alex Kidd as more of a power-based character. Instead of like trying to navigate jumps and cliffs or trying to run through a level quickly, Alex Kidd uses his fists. He punches through rock and punches enemies and basically like essentially sometimes like carves his own path into certain levels. So as opposed to other platform games that really depend on like tight jumping, Alex Kidd hasn't really ever been that. It is definitely more of a fight your way through a level, punch your way through a level. There are certainly some parts to navigate, but it definitely has a different feel than the classic Mario games. So I think it's phenomenal, and I think it's really cool that they're making a remake for this. Completely caught me off guard, if I'm being totally honest with you. I did not expect this game 35 years later to get a remake, but it's cool that it is. And if you're interested in these types of platform games, I think this is definitely worth checking out, to at least say that you visited like a classic from what is almost going to be 40 years old. I think one of the coolest features of this game too is the fact that you can, at the switch of a button, jump back and forth between the classic graphics and the new graphics, kind of like if you've played the Halo Master Chief Collection. So if you're in the middle of a level and you're like, oh, I want to see what this specific place looks like in the old graphics, you can do that at the switch of a button, which is amazing. I love the fact that this game included that. It basically gives you a taste of the old and the new. I think this is definitely well worth checking out. And if you want to see a review of it, I wrote a review of this, believe it or not, 7 years ago of the original game with a buddy of mine. His name's Tubby Mora. So if you want to like check that out or anything, that would be cool. I'll leave it in the comments. But yeah, it's a cool game. It comes out June 24th. So anyone who's interested, I'd highly recommend checking that out, especially if you're into platform games. The next game I want to talk about is Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. This is kind of an interesting thing to talk about because Final Fantasy VII Intergrade is basically just like an updated graphical version of the PlayStation 4 version. Essentially, basically like, hey, we just made Final Fantasy VII Remake and now we're boosting the shit out of it so it looks even better on the PlayStation 5. Normally, I try not to talk about remakes unless it's something like Alex Kidd and it's like 35 years later, or it's like, you know, whatever. But this one I wanted to talk about because they're actually adding in a whole extra story known as Intermission, I suppose, is what they want to call it or whatever. And it's all about Yuffie, who is a very, very likable character, a very well-known character from the Final Fantasy VII game. She's essentially like her own like little isolated individual, and she has her own story during this time. If you've played the original Final Fantasy VII, you know we don't really see Yuffie's story during this time. She's not a character that's really introduced to the party until later. later. So I do actually kind of like the idea of this. I feel like we're going to get a lot of original story points here. It's all about her quest to find some ultimate materia that's hanging out in Midgar. So we're going to kind of like see the story from her perspective, which is really cool. There's also the Fort Condor minigame. For those that don't know what that is, it's kind of like a strategy type game. So that's kind of cool if you're interested in that. It's mostly just like a minigame that's built into the intermission story. So again, just kind of something interesting to check out if you are interested in, the Final Fantasy VII game and you have a PS5. It's a free upgrade. Now, the buzzkill. It's PS5 only. So if you own a PS4, unfortunately, this is not available to you. At least the Yuffie part of the story. It is PS5 only, which I did find kind of interesting. I suppose that's kind of their way to push people to a new console, even though it's not really a Sony game. But I suppose it's also just because they're trying to take advantage of the new upgrades and technology. I don't know. But yeah, so if you're interested in trying out the Yuffie story, hopefully you have a PS5, I will definitely be trying this out because I'm really excited to learn more about this character. Yeah, and it's free. So if you own Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can pick this up for free. So hopefully you do that. And speaking of PS5 exclusives, let's talk about Rift Apart, which is the newest Ratchet & Clank game that's being released tomorrow. This game is going to be coming out June 11th. There's so much to unwrap with this game. Just like looking at the trailer for it, there's like a million different things I could say. Again, for the sake of keeping this short, I'm not going to say too much. But I mean, we could sit here and we can talk about the new dimensional gameplay, which looks absolutely amazing, the gorgeous graphics. I think the first thing I want to talk about is the new character Rivet, who, if you don't recognize that voice, you have not watched enough children's TV shows and or played enough video games. Jennifer Hale is like one of the most prominent voice actors in video games. There is no voice that I like register in my head more than Jennifer Hale's. So many different voices she's done. And so it was really cool hearing her voice. It's like nostalgic to me, just based on all the different characters that I've heard of her in the past. So it's really cool to see her on board, really cool to see them bringing a new character in. Again, I'll talk a little bit about like the different components. The game has these things known as pocket dimensions, which are like these little like extra areas. And for those that have played Ratchet & Clank or really a lot of other video games, these typically lead to like these smaller isolated areas. But in this game, these little pocket dimensions are like full-blown levels. And you use this dimensional travel to like travel back and forth from different places. But even outside of just the really cool dimensional idea, it's the graphics in the planets and the style that they have. Traversing from planet to planet looks like it is going to be just a goddamn joy. Just the way that you navigate, the way that you grapple through the world is amazing. And speaking of the planets, looking at the design that makes each world so unique is so awesome. They are doing such an amazing job with this game. Every trailer I see of this just like has me dying wanting to play this. It'll probably be like second on my list because as of the day this video is going up, the 7 Intergrade is out. So I'm probably playing that while you're watching this video. But as soon as I finish the Final Fantasy Intergrade, I'm definitely going to be jumping into Ratchet & Clank because this game just looks absolutely phenomenal. Okay, we have 2 bigger releases that I want to touch on today, but really quickly before I do that, I want to talk about a game called Guilty Gear Strive. I don't have a lot to say about this game. In fact, really, I'm probably going to almost cut it off there. But I know this is a game Nick wanted to mention. It is a fighting style game. So, think in terms of like something like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat or, I can't think of any, like Street Fighter. Basically like that, you're on a stage, you're 2 people fighting. Like I said, I don't know too much about it, but it is one of the, I would probably say the only fighting game I think that's coming out this month. But it looks really, really cool. Definitely more of an anime style of combats. So if you're interested in fighting games, there it is. I don't have much to say, but I wanted to say it just so, I can say that I talked about it. They have the classic typical things like arcade mode, things like that. But it looks cool, and I know it's a popular franchise, so those of you that are interested, go for it. All right, the second to last game that we're going to be talking about today is the new Mario Golf game coming out. This was kind of a very nice surprise to a couple people in our group. I know Nick really enjoys these games. I absolutely adore Toadstool Tour. I don't think anyone really expected to see a Mario Golf game come out. It's a little weird to say this is like the most exciting thing that Nintendo has probably announced this entire year, or at least like I shouldn't say announced, but has been released this entire year. I feel like, oh, Nintendo, what are you doing? The Switch it's such a great start, and then, oh, Lord only knows what's happened in the year 2021 with Nintendo. But this game does look really cool, and I am really excited to play this game. I think what I'm really looking forward to with Super Rush is all the different game modes that it has. The golfing itself is always kind of fun, and obviously with the golfing game, it's like, well, I like the controls of the golfing itself, which are motion controls, by the way, which makes me a little bit sick. I know motion controls are not mandatory, but I always think it's so funny every time I see them say, oh, it'll feel like real golf. They've been saying that for the past like 15 years since the Wii came out. I don't need to hear it'll feel like real golf anymore. But I think what I really, really enjoy with this game, and at least from what I've seen from it so far, are the new game modes being added in. The first one is called Speed Golf. This one reminds me of, I believe it was called like 1,000-foot robot golf is what that game was called. But essentially, instead of just counting number of strokes or number of hits it takes to get the ball in the hole, instead it's more just a race to get your ball in the hole. So you can hit it as many times as you want. You don't wait for your friends to go, and it's just a race to be the first to get the ball in the hole. So I think that's a really cool game mode. I think that'll be a more exciting and fast-paced game mode. Golfing games tend to suffer from being very slow-paced because they take turns and things like that, and so they can kind of drag. So I think the idea of having a speed golf mode is really, really cool, and I'm glad that they're putting that in there. And as I mentioned, these new modes that I mentioned here are not even all necessarily new modes. Take the adventure mode, for example. This is not a new thing to Mario Golf, but I'm so glad they're putting it in because the adventure mode from the Game Boy version was a lot of fun, particularly similar to like the Mario Tennis games and things like that. Basically, you have a Mii character that's going through training, and so they're essentially learning how to be a golfer. And so there's different golfing coaches, there's different courses and things that you go visit, basically as you're trying to like level up and get your character some experience. So it's pretty bare bones, right? It's not like it's going to be like an intense story or anything like that, but just the fact that they have a story at all, I think is really, really nifty. And then the last thing, and I think this is probably the coolest thing to me, is the battle golf mode. So there's a battle golf mode which kind of reminds me of like a Top Golf Stadium. For those that don't know, I went top golfing with my friends and it was a lot of fun. All the dudes. But it kind of reminds me of like a Top Golf setup where like the lights are crazy, and instead of being like an open golf course, it's like in a closed place. So this is more of a stadium. And you do like different battle mode games. One of the ones that they were talking about was like capture the flag, essentially. So it's almost like you use your ball to like collect different flags, and you try to get as many as you can, and then the first one to a certain number wins. Just little game modes like that I think are really, really cool. It's basically taking like the traditional golf mode and then like basically making it more fast-paced, more action-based, kind of allowing for like something that doesn't feel too monotonous. Again, I'm a fan of golfing game, and I'm not going to sit here and say the other golfing games are bad, because I know a lot of people really enjoy them. But I guess what I'm trying to say is for a lot of newcomers, right, it's a very slow-paced type game, and a lot of people would probably say, I'd rather play Smash Bros. I'd rather play Mario Kart. So I think the addition of all these modes that are a lot more faster-paced is going to help this game at least give it some, I don't know what the word is, it gives it some staying power, I guess you could say. In that if it was just typical golf, it'd be the kind of thing that like we as the dudes would probably play once and then probably never play again. But I think the fact that it has all these different game modes and stuff, I think is going to have a lasting impact, and I think that's kind of going to be the big selling point for this game. So I'm really, really excited to play this again. It comes out June 25th, so we have like a couple of weeks before it comes out. But again, if you like sports games, this one definitely looks like it'll be interesting. And for the last game that I'm going to be talking about this month, we have Scarlet Nexus. I am really, really excited to play this game. I don't know a ton about it. This has kind of been a game that I've been trying to keep a secret for myself. It's an action RPG. A lot of people have been comparing it to Code Vein. I don't know if any of you have heard of that game. I don't know too much about Code Vein, but I will say this game reminds me a ton of Astral Chain. And I really, really enjoyed Astral Chain. I know Travis played Astral Chain and also really enjoyed it. This game is very, very similar, pretty much down to like the story. The detail of the story, when I explain it to you, you're probably going to think that's just Astral Chain. because it sounds just like Astral Chain. The story in this game is essentially humanity is on the ropes. There's this new enemy called the Others that have essentially invaded Earth, and all of Earth's weapons are completely useless. So Earth has pretty much been backed up into a corner. We're down to like the last line of humanity, and there are special people that have special tactics. They basically have these special skill sets that allow them to basically take down these enemies, and so they're like the last line of defense. Sound familiar? Because that's the story of Astral Chain. Now, the difference is what these special abilities are. In Astral Chain, there were like monsters you could control. In Scarlet Nexus, you essentially have psychokinesis powers. So you're able to like interact and use the objects around you to kind of fight these enemies. And it looks really, really cool. I mean, it's a pretty heavy-looking anime game. It wouldn't be a GoldenDudez video if we didn't have at least one hardcore anime game, right? But it looks really, really interesting. The design of this game looks absolutely gorgeous. And I love the punk-style environments. I mean, I think that the general vibe that they were going for in this game was kind of a futuristic punk Japan. So it's a little different than Cyberpunk, right? Because it's a Japanese environment, but it still has that like futuristic punk vibe to it. I guess the word would be cyberpunk in a way. And so I think that's really, really cool. It has a really nice setting. The enemy designs look great. The characters in it seem really cool. And even just like the little trailers and images that have come out with this game, I think it adds up to make it look like something that could be a lot of fun. So I am really excited to be picking this game up. I think, again, it's a lot like Astral Chain, at least in terms of what I've seen, and even the combat in it. The way you fight enemies and the fact that you can use normal weapons, but obviously your powers and things like that are really going to be what it seems like are going to separate the players that struggle from the players that dominate. And I'm really excited to see like what the combat system is going to feel like, how it's going to play. Again, this one looks like a lot of fun. So I'm excited for this one, and that's all I have for this month. Again, there were a few other games, but I kind of wanted to stick to like the main 6 that we were going to discuss as a group. And so if there's any games coming out this month that I didn't talk about that you're interested, please let me know. There's quite a few games on my to-buy list. Intergrade luckily is free, but I want to try the new Alex Kidd. I want to try Ratchet & Clank and Mario Golf and Scarlet Nexus. So I have quite a few games that I need to save up for this month, because this felt like the biggest month, which is also part of the reason I didn't want to like skip this one. I feel like we've had a lot of boring anticipated releases with like boring games, and I feel like this was the first month that like had a lot of really cool looking stuff, and I'm like, I can't pass this up. So again, let me know what you guys will be playing and buying this month. I have quite a few things that I'm going to be trying out on my end. So thank you everyone for watching this. Again, it was great. Thank you for watching. Hopefully next month we'll be back to like having the whole crew with us, or at least have 1 or 2 other people with me. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Adios.